Hello, everyone. This is Mary Kate Saliba with you here on Veteran Voices. I'm your host today, and I'm really excited to interview this veteran who's not just a veteran, but a very dear friend of mine and also an incredibly amazing mentor. My mentor, but I'm sure he'll be your mentor too. Before we get started, just a quick programming note. This program is a part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming, and today's show is conducted in partnership with a nonprofit that's near and dear to my heart, Military Women's Collective, started by Navy veteran Marina Brabenek. Shout out to Marina. She's doing incredible work for women veterans across the country, and you can learn more about that great nonprofit at militarywomenscollective.org. And then another one near and dear to me is also the Guam Human Rights Initiative. You can learn more about their great work at guamhri.org and how they're utilizing research to promote human rights in Guam and the region. So without further ado, here to introduce Batman. I feel like I need like a drum roll or like an entrance song for you, but Bruce Thompson. Thank you so much, Bruce, for joining me. You are the executive director of Ascend Collective, which is the nonprofit side of Town Ascend. And as everybody knows, here on Veteran Voices, I like to amplify the voices of veterans who are serving beyond the uniform. And Bruce Thompson, you are doing just that. So welcome, Bruce.
Oh, thanks, Mary Kate. It's a pleasure to be here. As we joke, we could talk for days about
Days.
anything and everything.
Yes.
But it's just great to be able to come in here and talk about my story, kind of where I'm at, what I'm doing, how we came to find each other and get connected, and now it's like the families know each other and interact. So
I know, isn't
that
it crazy, Bruce? I think it's been a couple of years now, maybe going on 3 years that known each other now. Let's
yeah
see, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but yeah, just doing the clock, it's just absolutely incredible how long we've known each other. And I know we've said this many times we had to narrow the list down, but I wanted to kick off today's show with a motivational quote. So I know you've got one, and if you feel so inclined, you're welcome to sing it too. But would love to hear what your
well
favorite motivational quote is and pump us up.
I'll save everybody's eardrums by not singing. But John Wooden, the famous UCLA basketball coach, is just known for incredible quotes, incredible thoughts. So the
Mm-hmm.
one that I really like to go with is, "Don't let making a living interfere with making a life." And
Love
it
that.
speaks to the work life balance that we all talk about and struggle to find. But it's what's truly important to us. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll be able to make money throughout your career, throughout your lifespan, but don't let money be so important that you forget to enjoy life, to spend time with those that mean the most to you, to do
So
the
true.
activities that give you that warm fuzzy heart, that put a smile on your face, that make memories that will
Mm-hmm.
last. So I love that quote. And again, it's he's a basketball coach, but really he was a philosopher, and he was a true leader, mentor, and just an idol to so many. So I think that's a great one to kick us off.
Oh, I love that. And it's so true, not even just like you said, he's a coach. So but it applies especially for us veterans. It applies for those of us who are transitioning at some point, and many of us are still transitioning. I'd say all of us are. And one of the things that I failed to mention is that you're a Marine. And I have to be careful that I can't say was a Marine, because once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. You stood on those famous yellow footprints. And so I just want to, let our listeners know we got a Marine in the house, and I gotta mix it up here sometimes because I get Army heavy or something, and I was like, I gotta ask some of my other brothers and sisters in the other branches to join me on the show. But I do want to get to know you a little bit better, have our listeners get to know about your roots, and just to, let us know about where you grew up at.
Well, I was born in Charleston, West Virginia. Uh, I was there until about 8 years old. Then I moved to the Southern California desert of the Imperial Valley. At that time, a
Culture shock.
we were a bump in the road. We weren't even a wide spot yet. We were just a bump. It was a farming town. It's about 13 miles from the Mexico border. I I got there. Spanish was the language spoken the most.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it really was just culture shock of, I went from living on the with the grandparents and everybody like in the hills of West Virginia and green everywhere to desert, uh, farm spots, learning that irrigation was the key to everything. Uh, Going to a friend's house and, the friend having to translate uh, anything that his parents said, to me because, a lot of those parents didn't speak English. Um, it it was definitely one of those like, wow, like, oh, this is going on, and that's before we start talking, West Virginia culture to California culture, and I like to call it the East Coast versus the West Coast because it's a little difference between the East Coast Marines and the West Coast Marines. West Coast a little more laid back, East Coast a little more uptight, but
Oh gosh. Culture
it's
shock for sure. I mean,
it's
you couldn't
definitely
pick any
different
different.
cultures. Oh,
I've been out, I was out in California recently. I felt like I was in a different country. From like the East Coast, it definitely felt different. Even the way they dress, I think it's funny at the airport when you see what flight people are about to board, and you get like there's like a Houston, Texas flight, and people wearing cowboy hats and their boots and whatnot, and then you get like Cali, and it's like ripped jeans. I don't know, like I think maybe like Los Angeles with like ripped jeans and I don't know, like different name brand stuff on their hoodies. It was just definitely different culture compared, like you said, like I feel like around here kind of like a little bit more
yeah.
conservative, uptight, a little bit serious. I love that you did the Marine comparison because I hadn't heard that, but I bet that's pretty true. So I was like, as far as like with your upbringing, did you grow up like big family, small family? Like, do you have some kind of lessons learned from that time?
Well, I grew up, my dad, my mom. Uh, I had four older brothers, one younger brother, but the younger brother didn't live with us. As uh, the four of us moved to California, the brothers, my oldest, which is the one I got along with, it's
Mhm.
funny that the oldest and the youngest, are the ones who got along. Uh,
That's a lot true in a lot of families. Yeah.
he's stayed for about a year and a half, and then he moved, back to Virginia with his dad. Uh, One of my brothers made it, 4 or 5 years, and it was like, okay, it's time to move back east. And he went back and lived with the grandparents, and so it was just that weird dynamic. So we had the
Mhm.
big family, then it narrowed it down, and being the youngest, I was the last kid in the house, uh,
Goodness. Yeah.
and and dad worked multiple jobs, mom worked, uh, but I grew up where if it was daylight, you were out and about. Your bike equaled your freedom, and you
Hmm.
got home before the street lights. So we talk about a lot of those things of, hey, where are you? And there are no cell phones, no tracking devices. So it could be one of those ones where I was like two towns over, um, and no one knew. So it was just that expansion, that experience, that uh, you know figuring out who, what, where things were, and uh, it's that traditional kind of upbringing that we had in the 70s and 80s. You know, then I did this crazy thing and joined the Marine Corps, and talk about another culture shock.
Well, that's what I wondered because I had, I interviewed Shirley Bias and she was talking about what led her to join the army and how she literally just saw something as simple as a billboard and like a message on a billboard. And she's the first one that told me that, because a lot of times it's like you go to the recruiting station and the Air Force store is closed, right? Like they're on like a 3 hour lunch break or something. And you're like, okay, I guess I'll just go across the hall to the Army or something. But just really curious to you talk about that culture shock, that out of your family dynamic, and just one day you're like, I want to join the Marine Corps. Like, talk us through that, how that came about.
So my oldest brother was in the Navy. Uh, he did 6 years, and his last year in the Navy, it was uh, my first year in the Marine Corps. So I saw, a lot of what he did and went through, because he was stationed in San Diego, which is a couple hours away,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's one of those ones of, okay, I can't join the Navy. I'm not going to voluntarily put myself on a ship for years. Uh, but the Navy was the recruiters that called me in. And so, hey, a chance not to be in school the afternoon. I'll take that, because if you were talking to recruiters, you were excused, so you could do that. And after I got done talking with the Navy recruiters, and by the way, the Air Force recruiter had a sign, call to make an appointment. They didn't even man that office on a regular basis. It was just like once a month, or maybe twice a month, they would come interview. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so of course, I was like, I'm not waiting around for any of that. Uh, and as I was leaving the Navy office, one of the guys that I knew and hung out with from time to time was in the Marine office, and said, "Hey, come on over." And next thing you know, we're signed up, delayed entry program. We almost did, moved me up for boot camp a month earlier to kind of go with the buddy program with him. And I was like, "Nah, I got my schedule. I'm good." But it's the few, the proud, the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to take the extreme challenge, join the Marine Corps and see if you can make it. See if you can, earn your title. And being that sports guy that's super competitive, there was a challenge, and it was like, heck yeah, I can do this. Watch this,
Yeah. The pull-up
and
bars, that's what I love with the Marines, like their booth, it's like the Army, they might give you like a little stress ball or something, but you got like the Marine Corps booth and they got the pull-up challenge bar, and you just see people like fall flat on their face, like even just trying to get up on the bar, or they slide off of it. I was even at the Iditarod race in Alaska, and it was snowing, like we were crunching on icy snow, and the Marines were out there. They're dressed up in their uniform, and they had the pull-up bar and like the giant blown inflatable bulldog, like
yeah,
and like it was massive. The thing I thought he was gonna blow away in the snow, but it was just one of those things where even though in like the winter survival weather, they have the pull-up bar out there, and they're just famous for that. And
yeah,
of course, Toys
it's
for Tots too.
oh, I love that program. I did independent duty 3 different times, so I got about 10 years of experience. Going to the events, supporting it, running the program for a few years. It is an awesome program, and it just does so much good. So I really love that, and that is the Marine Corps Reserve program. So we could
Hmm.
go into that whole storyline about how it works and the origins, but yeah, that's definitely one of those ones. And I'll tell you, before we
Hmm.
move on for that real quick, a Marine Corps spouse is why the Marine Corps Toys for Tots program exists.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
if
Interesting.
you look up the history, it was uh, a major spouse was like, well, here's this. Why don't we do this? Well, there's no one to really, no organization doing it. She's like, well, then you
Hmm.
should do it. And like every good Marine, he said, yes, ma'am. And uh, there it went. Now it's helping, thousands, if not millions of
Oh my
families and
goodness, they're
kids a
so
year.
famous. It's like in comparison, like the Salvation Army's bell that you
Yeah.
hear at Christmas time, right? And you hear the bell going, and but it's the Toys for Tots with the Marine Corps is just something that we just all know, and at this point we've grown up with it. Like I
Yeah.
don't remember like a Christmas time where there wasn't a Toys for Tots box somewhere, everywhere. So it's just again a very nostalgic but just so meaningful about the impact that they're making still, and it's still going strong. So shout out to Toys for Tots with the Marines. But I would say I don't blame you if that was the reason, one of the reasons too about joining the Marine Corps. The other one I get with joining the Marines is the uniform, right? Because
Yeah.
there's like no question, you all don't have to change your uniform. Like we've been, I'm an Army veteran. We're like, I feel like we change our uniform every several years. Even in my time in the Army, like I've had to change my uniform like 3 times. So, but the Marines, you guys got it down first time go. So
Yeah, we changed camis a few times with the different type of print, but when we talk about our service and our dress uniforms,
yeah, the
not a whole
dress.
lot of change. The only real change recently was going to white pants in the summertime, and then our females they went from a different coat to the traditional Marine Corps coat that was for the men. Well, they came out and said, we want to have, everybody looking a certain way. And I'll tell you, I love the look. It's kind of fierce. You see it and it's like,
You call it
you,
fierce.
you just look at it and you're like, that's a badass right there. And
I
whether it's
know, right? The belt. Yeah.
I, just the belt, the collar, just the
Mhm.
the presence that it brings, and
They look
you know
sharp for sure.
you see non-military people see Marines and they're like, yeah, that's a Marine, and then they see the other services and they're like, well, which branch is that? You know, so it's definitely one of those marketed and branded and done right.
Yeah. It's just and there's so much I think with the Marine Corps, just so much tradition in what they do, and they really stick with that. But it's also something that I find out many folks I talk to that join the Marine Corps that that's what the part that they love about it, and why you don't say I was a Marine. That's like you
Yeah,
still feel like you're a part of that larger Marine Corps family forever, whether you served a decade ago or 100
it
years ago. So yeah, it has got a beautiful history too.
and it's the we earn our title. We don't get called Marines until almost the end of boot camp. And now it's they're called Marines when they get their Eagle Globe and Anchor emblem at the end of
Hmm.
the Crucible, which is just one heck of a field exercise that
So
stresses
a
you
whole lot
out.
of fun,
So
one big party, one
yeah,
good time, one good time. And well, I will say too with Guam, like and I mentioned the Guam Human Rights Initiative earlier, but me being my family being from Guam, like it's just again beautiful history there because we have our main road is called Marine Corps Drive. I mean, they just had the big ceremony for Camp Blas recently and out in Guam and the new Marine Corps base, but they really do have, talk about the Marine Corps and just what they did for us coming out of World War II. Um, so yeah, lots of, again, I mean, you all have been in so many different, and for those who don't know, just like what the Marine Corps is all about. But who better to ask than a Marine? So I do want to ask about some favorites about where you got sent to. Do you have a particular favorite duty station where the Marine Corps
so
sent you and the family, perhaps, or
so
maybe Geobat?
as as follow as far as my favorite duty station location, it was Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Uh,
Really? That's
it
interesting.
it was one of those ones where you're limited on who's there. You can't really just say, "Hey, I'm going to go for this long drive." Uh, most of us didn't even have vehicles, but it broke it back down to you really worked and lived with your fellow Marines, uh,
Mm,
and it created an even bigger, better bond. We're surrounded by water, so I mean, being from Southern California, water is a great thing to be surrounded by. Got to do really cool things, and as a sergeant of Marines at the time, that that really meant something. Uh, the way you were treated, the respect that you were given, the responsibilities, it was all there. So I love that. Now, we talk about, Kansas City. I was out there on I-9 duty, which is training Marine Corps reserves.
hmm.
And it that's the place where I made most of those friendships and bonds that last a lifetime. I joke I left there like in '03. I'm sorry, in 2013. So we're looking at a decade later.
Hmm.
I still talk to so many of those individuals and interact with them, whether it's social media, phone calls. They stop by and stay at the house when they're in this neck of the woods, and we visit them when we're in their neck of the woods. Um,
I
and
love the right. You say it's like you'll never end up being out. That's what I say. Just like this bigger family of having. That's why we call each other like brothers and sisters. Just
yeah,
because like you can, it could a decade could have gone by, or since you actually physically saw one another. But if you call them up and you need to crash on their couch, that they're totally going to let you do that. They probably give you their bed. It's just I think a beautiful thing, just the friendships and the bonds that we created. That where maybe somebody who's never served in the military couldn't fathom, like, what do you mean there was no air conditioning? What do you mean you didn't have any hot water? What do you mean like the food was being rationed? And just like those kind of living conditions, it's like there's a little bit of I think like a little bit of crazy in each of us who have served, where we're like, we love that because it's just something about going through, as we say, the suck that ends
yep,
up bringing us closer together. And those are the times that now looking back on it, we're like, oh my gosh, it totally brought us together and we can relate to one another on a different level.
yeah.
So I love
Hearing
that.
embracing the suck.
Yes,
If
that's a real saying.
it if you've been there and done it, like wow, does it like ring a bell and kind of take you back? Uh, but if you haven't, people are like, "What do you mean embrace this stuff? That's weird." And like, yeah,
Yep.
it's a different lifestyle, it's a different upbringing, a different culture that we're in. But that camaraderie that we share, that's something that when we're in transition, we really don't understand or realize how important that is and how much we're going to miss it as we take that uniform off for the last time, as we don't live surrounded by hundreds or thousands of fellow service members. So that's part of the transition process that you hear, but you just don't understand it until it's gone. And then a lot of
Right.
people struggle to find that outside of the service. And I think that's a big part of the mental health struggles. We talk about the depression, the anxiety. Uh, a lot have the PTSD. We were in combat for 20 years consecutive, and that's where this generation has uh, the most combat experience, because if you serve from 2001 to 2021, you more than likely made multiple deployments, and those things stick with you. So I definitely think the camaraderie, because there's nothing better than talking with a fellow veteran that's been there, done it, and understands.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
a big loss as we transition out, and yeah, as we're facing things that we've never faced before, and we're like, oh my goodness, what is transition, and what does it really mean, and how do I do it? Uh, that's something that I don't think it's talked about enough, is the camaraderie loss and the being around people that understand you, what you've grown up in, and it's that we don't need to say it, but we know that we're amongst peers, friends, and those individuals. We hear got your six. Some people are like, "What the heck's that mean?" And it basically just means that we've got your back.
Yeah.
Um, and those are things that as I transition myself, learning the new non-military work cultures. Hey, this is how this manufacturing factory did. Hey, this is what this contracting company did. This is what you did at these other sites and within the different nonprofits. And there's no handbook that says, "Hey, read this and you'll be fine," because everything's different. There is no one size fits all, and it's wonderful but scary. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's definitely hard
And the
to
identity,
find a
right?
spot.
Like that loss of identity a little bit there, because as we mentioned, like many of us joined when we were young. It's still in very much like our brain development years, and getting exposed. You said the culture shock that you experienced as a kid. Not everybody has the culture shock as a kid. Sometimes the first culture shock is that day at boot camp when they have these drill instructors screaming and yelling at them, and they're meeting people and they're having to work with people from all different walks of life, different backgrounds, folks that have never seen someone that looks like you and talks like you, like, accents that I heard when I was in service. And so it's that feeling of belongingness that once they've kicked that civilian out of you, and now you become molded into this fresh, shiny new service member. But I think that why we join the military is not always the same reason why we stay, right? And for
Right.
you, Bruce, like you stayed career, um, beautiful, loving wife, Neela, is stuck by your side through thick and thin throughout that whole time frame, which I think is such a beautiful thing. But what was it that got you to stay? Because I do want to talk about the transition piece and your advice for transitioning, but you stayed career. And I will say that even though like we just, 20 years Afghanistan, like you talked about the war, well, these veterans have experienced combat numerous times. And so that's not an easy thing for, from outside looking in to fathom why someone would stay.
So I'll date myself. I went to boot camp in '92.
Hmm.
So I got almost a decade in before 9/11 happened, and my contract first expired. I was married, two young kids, and no transferable skills. And there were not all these programs that talked about uh, transition, employment assistance. Hey, come to us, we'll help you write a resume. There wasn't even a transition, a TAPS program.
Right.
But as I was coming close to that last, 7 months mark, it was if I get out, what am I going to do? And it was I'll end up going right back to that small community where people just don't leave. They get stuck there. And it wasn't something I wanted to do. Um, I enjoyed the Marine Corps. I was very good at what I did. Uh, it it just said, well, let's change my military occupational specialty to something I'd rather do, but I'm going to stay Marine. And I did that. It meant going to a year-long school right away. It it was going to my first I&I duty where I'm like, what's I&I duty? What's this mean? And I've never thought about the reserve side, and all of a sudden, I'm there, training them, and how much can we fit into 2 days over a weekend? It I'm out not on a Marine Corps base, but I'm out. I was in Long Beach, California. I was in Kansas City, Missouri. Uh, not places where you expect to find a ton of Marines.
No,
And
because the more army, right? Because no water.
yeah, and
So,
and you started to learn how the general community saw military, saw the Marine
mhm.
Corps. I got to engage and do so many things that I never would have because of those duty assignments. And once you stay the first time you hit that 10-year mark, majority of us, not you, but majority of us make that commitment to stay, till 20 for our retirement. And that's where it was. I kept doing a good job. I kept getting promoted. And, I left a couple months shy of 24 years because my body broke down. Um,
Mm.
I would have stayed to 30. It would have been one of those
Oh
ones
wow.
where they're like, hey, you need to
They'd
go.
have
I'm
to
like,
force you out. Just
like,
like,
well, what do you mean I have to
Bruce,
go? Like, I'm comfortable. But
turn around
uh
like, Bruce, you're still here.
but going through and dealing with the injuries, which again,
Mhm.
I always kind of classified my guy as the sports guy. And then all
Mhm.
of a sudden, shoulder surgeries, knee surgeries, back issues, uh, and that's before we talk about mental health and internal. Just
But you sort of
it,
like suck it up, right? And you're like, I still got more in me. I can still push out a
you
little bit more.
we did it until my body just said no, and it took over a week, almost a week to recover uh,
Mm.
from a sports day that the company did, and that was the white flag for me and said, okay, it's time for me to go. Again, I talked with Neela. We figured out, what was the timeline. Uh, we figured out finances. We had to be kid free, debt free. Uh, and she's the CEO, the CFO, the COO, and all these other things of our household. And I'm a smart guy who says yes, ma'am, a lot.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Uh,
ma'am. There you go.
and so she kind of gave me a date and said, okay, I'm dropping my papers 14 months from this date, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to transition. And we met the requirements of being debt free, kid free. We we were very set and stable, and starting early enabled us to have a good transition. Now
That's great.
that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it was smooth and no problems. Uh,
But I
my
think what a key thing that you said there was that Neela was part of that decision for you to get out. And I think that that's a piece that we miss. I know you did, an incredible highlight there about Toys for Tots being started by a spouse, but how often do we talk to service members and they haven't even talked to their spouse yet, or
oh
they forgot that their spouse is part of this transition too? So I just want to, I know you're saying it with your experience, but I do want to highlight how actually unique that seems to be in comparison to the norm, which is let's just tell my spouse, okay, that's the date that it's happening without like pre-planning to say, let's make this decision together. Are we ready to get out?
and,
And
and
what do we have a plan? So yeah,
no,
exactly.
I tell you, I promote communication with spouses, with especially if you have teenagers, kind of tweens. You got to have these communications because it's stressful for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
if you're out there trying to make all the decisions for your family, well, you're going to have even more stress added to you. There could be some
True.
resentment, and this isn't what we're trying to do. This is a family decision. Uh, where we're going to live next. That that's a huge deal. Someone moved home to their old town that they grew up in, uh, and they hit culture shock there because as they left for 5, 10, 15, 30 years, the town moved, the town changed and grew and it
Oh,
came.
that's a great point. I
You
think
know,
sometimes too, as service members are like, do I move to where the job is at, or do I move to where I want to actually live? And I
yeah,
think that it's like we're kind of conflicted there, but right. But since the pandemic, since COVID-19, like so many remote jobs are opening now. But when you were transitioning, remote work wasn't as popular as it
no,
is now, right? It was kind of like you don't go to online school. That's a no, and then you don't do remote work wasn't really an option. And so yeah,
uh,
like yeah, what was that like for you trying to figure out what's next? And add in there too about your advice for those service
so
members.
so for us, the first year post retirement, we stayed in Camp Pendleton in San Diego County. Neela was a family readiness officer with the Marine Corps, so she dealt with the transition, the family programs,
Right.
making sure that communication between command service members and their families was there. And whether that was spouse, kids, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, it was whoever the service member said was, "This is my family. I want them involved and included." So she
Right.
was completely, in the mix, and that was her second second unit as being a family readiness officer. So she had all the insights and made sure I was signed up for the Franklin Covey classes, love languages, all these things to kind of help me make that mental transition and to understand thoughts and all. It it got to be we're 6 months from our year being out, and we were still living in housing because Pendleton had plenty of houses, and so retirees could stay. Uh, she came and asked or said, "Hey, the lease is up in 6 months. What are we going to do?" And I was like, "Well, we're not going to re-sign it." That was my big command. Like, I'm done with California. I don't want to be here anymore. Let's get out of here. And she said, "Okay, where are we going to live?" And that was the slap across the face of, "Oh crap, I just made this decision that we're not going to live here anymore. Where are we going to live?
Right.
And I printed out a map of the U.S. for Neela. I had one for myself. We went in separate rooms. We picked the cities that we were interested in living. We came back together. And again, Neela and I have known each other for 30 plus years. We were best friends today. We met in high school. We're about to hit our 20-year reunion, our anniversary. And I had 7 cities. She had 6.
Mm.
Her 6 and matched with mine. The only one that was different was I had Nashville because that's where she was living when we got married, and I brought her back to Southern California. So that was, I don't want to go to Nashville, but you followed me. So if you want to go back, I'll follow you. And luckily,
Wow.
she said she didn't want to go there. And we quickly, well, hey, Texas, it's going to kind of be similar to Kansas City, where it's lake life, not beach life. And she wasn't a big lake fan. So I brought that up. She said, okay, Texas is off. So we had Tampa or Jacksonville, Florida.
Hmm.
And, we have, some family in Tampa, plenty of employment opportunities, things to do, great place to be. And then we talked about Jacksonville. It had, everything that, a military retiree would want. Because, if you spend all that time and you earn, access to these benefits, you really can't take advantage of them if you're not close to the bases, the resources. Uh, and so we didn't know a single soul. We'd never been to Jacksonville in our lives. And we smacked the table and said, we're moving to Jacksonville. That was
I just
all
want to hit
done.
like this point that our listeners don't know what I know, but like you and Neela basically, I feel like run Jacksonville. Like when people talk about like who to connect with in the veteran community in Jacksonville, it is the Thompson duo. Like Bruce, Neela, you two are you're I just want to, highlight that you just said like you didn't know anybody and you all just decided to move there. And now look at you two now. I mean, you just again, everybody's like
and,
connect with you two. They go anywhere near Jacksonville.
and I love it. It is. I got a buddy who's named me the Veterans Mayor of Jacksonville.
Hmm.
I laugh. I said, "Well, if I'm the mayor, you're my deputy." And he's like, "I'll follow you wherever you go, Bruce." And I was like, "Okay." Uh, but it is such a incredible military retiree community. 25% of Duval County is military or veteran connected. That's huge. We've got 3 naval bases. One's right across the border into southeast Georgia, but we have them. We've got Marine Corps Recruiting Command, a Marine Corps base, a couple reserve spots, Coast Guard.
So they're
You
just like red, like everybody's just wearing red down there. Is
know,
for those who are listening, you're wearing red right now. So I just can see is
yeah,
everybody in Jacksonville red.
Fridays are red.
Fridays are red. Good.
And if those that don't understand, that is Red Friday is you remember everyone deployed,
Yes.
and it's just a day for us to wear a bright color, but just to kind of, we haven't forgotten that there's people that aren't home with their families that are
100%.
overseas, and I'll tell you, as someone who's been overseas multiple times, it does get lonely. It does kind of get a little like, what's happening in the real world while I'm over here. Uh, but we showed up to Jacksonville, and one of the things that me and Neela had said is when we pick our permanent home, we are going to be pillars of our community. And we got there. Dumb luck followed us, so we picked a great short-term rental. Uh, the owner talked to us because we were staying, more than a week or two, so he'd like to talk to those long-term uh, residents. He's a broker, so he talked about some real estate. Then across the courtyard from us was his real estate agent, who happened to be a Army spouse. Um, and she became our real estate agent, and her and Anita looked at hundreds of houses. That first night, she brought her husband over, and Neela and her talked about real estate and all that. By the way, she joined the Army. She's an active duty service member currently, so
Oh, wow.
that's really cool.
Very
Uh,
cool.
and me and uh and the Army vet, we sat there and did what we did. We talked a little Marine Army crap to each other, but we talked about different things that were going on. And he's like, "What are you doing Saturday?"
Instant,
I'm like driving around lost.
instant rapport right
Oh
there.
yeah, and
Like,
he took me to Neil and I both to this great event, which is the largest recurring gathering of veterans in the state of Florida, and walked me in there and introduced me to the who's who in the zoo. I did the shake hands, I did the business card exchange. Uh, the program started, uh, and then as that was ending, me and Neil kind of like, okay, you go left, I'll go right, and we just did that loop to all the exhibitors. We met uh, in the halfway point, kind of debriefed each other about, hey, make sure you really talk to this person and talk to this person, and we finished the loop.
mhm.
uh, Went home, and the rest of that weekend was spent, LinkedIn requests, emails asking if I can, buy him a cup of coffee. And luckily enough, I had a retired brigadier general say, "Sure, you can buy me a cup of coffee." And he gave me 20 minutes of his time, complete stranger, but I reached out and did what we're supposed to do. And you know, he he and I really, if you talk to one of us, you're going to figure out everything that's going on. He's the great mentor. He's done so much. He's that uh, sounding board. He's that calmness that's there. And me and him kind of just have done so many things where, hey, he's the CG and I'm the senior enlisted, and we have those 5 minute conversations that, if we were with the board or the group, would take an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Right.
And it's just that
Hit it
instant
off.
rapport
Yeah.
that goes back and forth. We both just stepped down as co-chairs for the Community Veterans Engagement Board, which is veterans and the local VA working together to solve issues at the lowest level, to bring up concerns. And I'll tell you, I love my VA. So many people talk bad about them. I've yet to have a negative experience with them. I've had people that
It's great.
have. I've been able to hop on a call, uh, get it fixed, corrected, because we just have an awesome team that they want to, be the best. And that's it's
Well,
so
I
much
think
to
it's a
this
testament
community.
that there's so many veterans where you're at that I think it is a true testament to just how much they've been, like how good they are, because that is becoming part of the conversation is with transitioning service members and picking where to go. It's like, one, were they not going to tax the heck out of my retirement? But like, two is just the veteran friendly communities, and I think we just with any just as humankind, like we want to be able to identify with the community that we're in and living in, and you were able to do that. And look at you now. I mean, that's one of the things where I do want to take the time to talk about the Ascend Collective. And you had like the advice, but it's key for those who are listening who are going through their transition, that even if you're not, because I'll say this, Bruce, I know that you're not one that likes to be around crowds or in a bunch with like a ton of people, but you put yourself out there, and you did it with Neela by your side, your beautiful spouse, and you just like went out there and you got it done, and you did, took the advice from so many other mentors, and you didn't come in there, coming outside looking in, like you really humbled yourself because you're a senior enlisted leader. I think it's all too easy for us to get in our own head about what the rank and be like, I already know this, I know what to do. But then when you find you hit that wall and you're like, it's not working the way I want to do it, so maybe I should take a step back and see how else to do it. But I do want to talk about the Ascend Collective, because I know we're running close to the end of time here, but I want to get a chance for our listeners to hear about the great work that you're doing and how you all are still giving back to the military veteran community.
So currently, I'm the executive director of the Ascend Collective. We are the nonprofit side of Talents Ascend. Uh, we work with 3 communities of focus, which are Veterans Ascend, Military Active Guard Reserve, Veterans all eras, all service discharge statuses, military veteran spouses, 18 plus year old military dependents. All that
Mm.
encompasses Veterans Ascend. Our second community of focus is Ability Ascend. Simply put, anyone that has a disability. Our third community of focus is Mission to Ascend, and this is for those that had run in with the law. They're looking for their second chances, and
Right.
all three of these communities are underserved. You know, we can spend
Absolutely.
the next month talking about military spouses that are either underemployed or unemployed, and the talent that they have in them. We talk. It's ability ascend. It's not disability ascend. It's ability ascend, because we talk about strengths. We don't focus on weaknesses. We talk about strengths. So we don't talk about what you can't do. We talk about what you can do. Again, I'm 100% permanently and totally disabled veteran from the VA. So if we talk about, all those things that ail me, well, one, we'd be here for another week, but it would really take away from what people think I could do. But we don't do that.
Right. You don't want to focus on that.
We don't talk
Can I?
about weaknesses. We talk about strengths, and those
I
are
love that.
things that we really focus on. Plus, all three of these communities, they have federal and state programs that encourages employers to hire and retain them. So
Great.
as we're
Is it any
here,
era, Bruce? Is it any era of veteran? Because I find there's so many VSOs out there that will only help the post 9/11 veteran.
no,
So I think it's important when they say veteran, do they mean any
all
veteran?
all eras, all service discharge statuses.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. That's
we have
fantastic.
we've got veterans that are going to fit into Veterans Ascend, Ability Ascend, and Mission to Ascend. You know,
Hmm.
we talk
I
about a
know
lot
some
of
I'm going to
those.
send your way.
We know those Vietnam and Korea era
Yes.
veterans that we didn't talk about PTSD.
No.
They
Mm-mm.
were, hey, something's wrong with you, and you did something stupid, and they went to jail for decades. It wasn't, let's get them treatment, let's get them help. It was, add, I don't know what's wrong with them, but they broke the law, they're going to jail. So we got to talk about those second chances and everything that comes back with it. And we have to talk to people about who they are, what they really want to do, where they're going to excel, and set them up so they can become employment ready. A lot of us, we're not employment ready right out the gate. We have to learn what transition means. We have to learn the job market. We have to figure out who we are as a person and what we really want to do. And I'll tell everybody, I'm extremely lucky. I get to do what I love. I go to work every day and I'm in the passion project.
Yes.
That is not common. So many people
Mm-mm.
go to work and it's, I got to get this paycheck. I got to, keep the lights on, food on the table, roof over my head. And, you know, I wish everyone the opportunity to get to where I'm at some point during their lives. Uh, and I've been blessed. I'm going to tell you, you know, dumb luck has followed me around,
Blessed, Bruce. You
and
are blessed. Outside looking in,
and
blessed man right here.
and, and to be able to appreciate that, and you know, I don't talk about hey, I've humbled myself. I'm just who I
Hmm.
am. That's one of the things that you're going to get there. There's no act, anything else. Uh, I embrace my veterans, so I got the long hair, I got the beard. Uh, you know, it's just being comfortable with who you are, and then willing to put yourself out there to assist as many people as you can. So you know that's the wow factor. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's what gets me going. That's fills my emotional fuel tank. But I do want to hit Talents Ascend, which is the business side. So Talents Ascend is the future of hiring. Our CEO and founder worked in HR for a Navy veteran, 9.5 years, got out, was told all her skills and experiences meant absolutely nothing. It's funny because she did admin in the Navy, so I don't know how admin outside in the civilian workforce didn't cross over. But hey, she worked for 30 years in civilian HR. She took notes and said this is all the things that she saw wrong with the process. So she developed a AI powered platform. Ready for this? This is the great part. no
Right.
resumes,
Oh,
no job searching, no applications. Employers and candidates get matched based on skills. So candidates and the candidate pool is open to everyone. We have our three communities of focus, but anyone that is looking for employment can sign up and create their free candidate profile. When they create that profile, they're talking about up to 25 skills that they have and want to use in their next career. And this is
mm,
very important because there's so many of us that are career changers. In the Marine Corps, I did maintenance management. I was, whether it's motor transport, ordnance, or communication electronics maintenance. When I got
right.
out, I jumped all the way into HR and said, no, I don't want to do that. So if you look at my profile, you will not see anything that talks about maintenance, uh, logistics is gone. You talk about
Yep.
communication electronics, it's all gone because we have to focus on who we are and what we want to do now, not what
Can I
we
add that
did.
that's for the photo too? Because how often do we see
Yes.
everybody who's still wearing their uniform photo in their LinkedIn picture? Are you still trying to stay in the military? So it's like you got to dress for the job you want. I have a very good family friend of mine. He wanted to be a mechanic at the time. So he was getting ready for his job interview and he's dressed up like a mechanic. And I was like, man, you're about to go in for this interview. Aren't you going to like clean up a little bit? It's like, nope, I'm going in there for the job that I want. And this is how I dress. And that's what he did. And they loved him. But it was just, again, you dress for the job that you
Right.
want. Right. So,
And
not just like skills, but also the picture. So,
yeah, and I'll tell you, for those that aren't on LinkedIn, I don't know what you're waiting for. Um,
you
that's
tell him,
where
Bruce.
that's where everybody goes and looks. But for the business side of Talents Ascend, our employers, which are members,
Mm-hmm.
they pay a membership fee. That's how we pay the bills and keep the lights on. Uh, but when they post their openings, they might put uh, diesel mechanic, and they'll list 3 to 25 skills that candidate needs to have. They go into the AI platform and they came up with matches. So one of the big things is, Mary Kate, you're the employee or the candidate. I'm the employer. When we first get matched, we remove all the unconscious biases from that. So all I get is first and last initial, the skills you listed, locations, and salary range. That's all the
Wow.
information I get to make a decision on if I'm going to open your profile or not. So they don't know if you're 18 or 100, male or female, ethnicity, nothing. And there's not even enough information for them to try to search. I'm just saying, type in VT in Google and see what you come up with. You're not going to find me unless you dig for a long while. And even then, you're like, is that the right person?
But I think it's just so important, even just to highlight that that is something that we are still facing in our workforce are those biases, like those,
Yeah.
and to take that out and remove that from the process, like you just, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I know the military's like slowly is trying to do it with the DA photo. They're like, okay, we don't need the photo anymore because, there is that profiling,
Yeah.
I'll
And
say, when it comes to selection.
and it's one of those ones where, again, we talk about the unconscious biases. We
Hmm.
don't know that we have them. We don't know. I did a LinkedIn poll about beards. Is beards an issue with people feeling comfortable working with them? If you have a people with a LinkedIn profile or whatever picture you have that shows them with the beard, is that a deterrent for them moving on to, the candidate process with an interview or anything else?
Right.
Tattoos, long hair, colored hair, you know, piercings. You start to name it. All these things, uh, people have that thoughts
Yeah.
about them. So
Even
we
dye my
do.
hair, I was like one of the things, the little things in life where I'm like, I just want to, can I just like make my hair like blue or something? You're just going
And
like different color things that we couldn't do in the military, right? Like getting a face tattoo and you're just
well,
like, can I do these things now? And will they hire me
and and
to
like
think about that
you
stuff?
talked about, Marina. We know Marina because she has the teal hair. That's one of
Yeah,
her new.
Marina wants teal hair.
That's
Yeah, she
that's the
just told
trademark.
me. Yep, her
And
trademark. Even her Bitmoji has teal
yeah,
hair.
and my daughter. growing up in Southern California, she was coloring her hair from an early age. When she graduated high school, it was blue. Uh, it
Yeah,
looked
shout out to
great.
the Military Women's Collective, right? Whose colors are teal. Their founder, Navy veteran Marina Rabanek, her hair is also teal. So
And,
yeah, it
and
just yeah.
yeah, my daughter, went from the Southern California where colored hair was no big deal. She
Mm-hmm.
moved to Pittsburgh. She could not find a job to save her life. And she kind of came in and said, um, it's more conservative. She dyed her hair back a dark brown. And the next day when she went and applied for positions, she was getting immediate interviews. She had multiple job offers. And it was nothing
Wow.
changed except her hair color. So understanding the culture, the community, and the standards, and they
Mm-hmm.
change. And
Yes.
whether you're in the Northeast, the Southeast, Texas, Montana, the West Coast, you name it.
Yeah, like Texas, like its own entity. Texas.
Well, I mean,
So,
look
but
at the size of it. Look at the size of
I
Texas,
know you're
and
good at our what's
and
already doing.
and inside Texas, you have all these other regions that break it down a little bit further, from like full cowboy to
But
more like
I know
so understand
that. Yeah,
location, and that's
great advice.
uh
Great advice.
as I know we've gone way over time, but that's because me and you can talk for days.
I know
Uh,
I know they're gonna say, when did you wrap it up, Mary Kate? But it's really because I know that there's so many out there that are probably in those shoes now of just where do I go? I love that you and Neela had the maps laid out. You went in two different rooms. I think that's, and again, just highlighting how beautiful it is to have your spouse part of the process, your family, the team Thompson, to make those decisions together, to not only
it
retire but to transition and relocate. And look at you, like I said, look at you both now, killing it
and
down in Jacksonville.
and I'll tell you, when we both made a decision that we're going to go to Jacksonville, neither
Mm-hmm.
one of us had jobs lined up. You know, we basically, uh, she resigned her position and was moving here unemployed. Um, I went to resign my position, and they're like, no, we want to keep you on, and you can do remote HR. Oh, by the way, the primary contract holder for the Department of Labor workshops uh, runs that region, and they need facilitators. So as I'm driving cross country to relocate from San Diego to Jacksonville, Florida, I'm doing a phone interview while I'm driving for a new position. We had to get started a little bit later in the morning because for job interview number two, I had to do a presentation. So I couldn't do a presentation, while I'm driving. So we were in the hotel, and I did a quick presentation interview, and congratulations, you got the position, and it went there, and we showed up, and we just embraced our new community. We embraced who we were, what we wanted to do,
Right.
and that that propelled us to where we are today. And again, she's the chief of staff for Talents Descend. I run the nonprofit side. Um, it's
Well,
again,
Talents
it's
Ascend,
a
they're lucky to
partnership.
have in partnership, even though it's like, yes, ma'am, at the end of the day. But it's like Talents Ascend is the Ascend Collective. I love the work that you both are doing. They're very lucky to have you there, Team Thompson, as a duo team to work for this incredible organization. And I just love, again, the fact that if we have that you're willing to help veterans of any era, any discharge status, because when it comes to those second chances, I think especially for our service members who ended up getting kicked out for whatever reason or a different discharge status that's other than honorable, that you still have a life to live. There's so much out there. There's so much left that you have to give. And it's just, again, finding that next mission purpose, no different than those of us transitioning with the honorable discharge. So I do love that you're willing to help those folks navigate their journeys. I think it's important, and it's something that not a lot of other VSOs are doing, veteran service organizations. So on behalf of the entire team here at Veteran Voices, I just want to thank you, Bruce, for joining me, and for you and Neela being such near dear friends and so pivotal. I know we didn't so pivotal in my transition, but we didn't even touch on how I got my current job. But we'll have to save that for a different day or maybe a LinkedIn post. But just really thank you so much for joining us. How can folks get a hold of you? What's the best way if they want to ask more questions about the Ascend Collective or just your mentorship in general?
So we have the ascendcollective.org for the nonprofit side. And we're always looking for volunteers, just throwing it out there. talentsascend.com will take you to the candidate and employer side of the house. And I'm easy to find. If you look up Bruce Thompson, MBA on LinkedIn, you're going to find me. I'm the guy with the beard.
Great.
Make sure you send a note. I'm also on Veterati as a mentor. Veterati is a great mentorship site. It's a 1-hour phone call with the mentor or mentors of your choosing, where you can talk about whatever questions you have, do informational interviews, and get insights from thousands of just incredible people.
For free.
For free. And I tell you, Veterati is when you're trying to figure out who you are, what you want to do. And then once you figure that out, we go to my best buddies over American Corporate Partners, and we get that mentor from a Fortune 200 company that is going to just wow when talking about industry, how certain things work. So there's so many incredible resources that are free. Please do not pay someone to write a resume. Do not pay somebody to write your LinkedIn profile. Don't pay people for things that you can get for free. And there's so many resources, over 45,000 that are out there to help us out. Please save your money. It's hard to come by.
Let us help you first, before you go that route. Just, yes, like you said, use those resources. I know we have a lot of friends of ours that do charge for those things, but you said just try out the free stuff first, see if it works, and go from there. But it's invaluable, right? That mentorship piece. I've gone through American Corporate Partners. I've gone through Veterati. I was a mentee in both, now a mentor in both. So again, just continue to pay it forward. You go through this process as you're learning. There's nothing to say that you are not qualified to share that knowledge with somebody else coming out behind you. So no matter where you're at in your transition, even if you're only like 6 months in, lean back, look back to the guys and gals that have come in behind you. Even with 6 months, more than they do. So just, share it, pay it forward. We invite everybody that's listening. Thank you again for tuning into Veteran Voices. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. And a big thank you to our partners at Military Women's Collective and the Guam Human Rights Initiative. Again, go check out the Ascend Collective, and that's ASCEND for those of you who don't know how to spell Ascend. I know it's one of those unique words we don't use a lot, but it's just incredible organization. This is Mary Kate Saliva wishing you all nothing but the best. Do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. Thank you so much, Bruce. Take care, everybody.
It's my pleasure, my honor. Thank you.